offering to the water spirits before we begin, because this is something that I've been thinking about. Because from what I've seen, the spiritual plane and the plane of the digital world is actually so much more related than most people think. And it's something that I began to really hone in on when I was finishing up my training with one of the most powerful shamans in Mexico, public shamans at least, Sergio Magana. And he was teaching the technique of healing using the reflection and the shadow. And this is something he actually discovered when he was working with many ancient Egyptian deities, and also doing his best to heal his mother of cancer, which he successfully did, which is actually quite the difficult thing for healers, is actually healing people in their own family. So don't feel bad if you still haven't mended some of your relationships with your family. But he was in this situation where his mother had cancer. He'd healed thousands of people from pretty much incurable diseases from the Western standpoint using the science of dreams. This is an ancient discipline from Mexico that is really about realizing and implementing the results when you realize that dreams are actually more powerful than reality. So they woke up what's known as the Nahual, or the dream body. And this is actually comes from the Nahuatl, or the language of central Mexico's root, Nehua, which means the real I. Because the unconscious in this tradition, which is known as the Toltec tradition, is something that is like our super conscious in a way, because we're dreaming ourselves here and it's being dreamed by this Nahual, which is everything around us. But we think that we're the tonal, or the I in the sun. So this is the description of ourselves, the story, the ego. When you begin to realize who you really are, you can wake up and realize that you're dreaming this, and there are certain techniques to wake up that dream body, or Nahual, and create changes. And so, as he's been going through this process for over, I think, 25 years now, and healing many thousands of people in the process, writing some books like The Toltec Secret, which I highly recommend for anyone that wants to learn more about this. But he realized that in some of the alchemy, the transformative techniques that he was given of transmitting the energy through the Pleiades and learning about the Pleiades, which are not just a group of aliens, but also a cluster of stars that are some of the most renowned stars, really, across every ancient culture, all the way from the Pacific Islands to Alaska. And so, using this alchemy of the Pleiades, he realized that some of the most powerful magic in the world is based on the shadow and the reflection. And these are not just like symbolic terms, they're also literal, because some of the most powerful alchemy of Central America was all done through the lens of the deity Tezcatlipoca. But rather than deity, it's better to think of it as an essence, which is more what the word of even translates to, teot, which means energy. But at any rate, Tezcatlipoca is like known as smoking mirror. And in those days, the mirror was not quite made of the same things that we think of as mirrors today. Because the Aztecs didn't really ever, and the Toltecs and the Maya before them didn't ever really develop metallurgy in the same way that we did. And they also had a much more easier source of mirrors, which is obsidian. And so Tezcatlipoca is like a great smoking mirror. And the reason that it's smoking is it's said that everything is a reflection in smoke. So if you were like an ancient people and you were trying to describe quantum physics, smoke in a mirror certainly sounds like a fine way to do it. But at any rate, he was this great deity of smoke and mirrors, which is actually creating the world. So when you see that dreams are creating the world, people say magic is smoke and mirrors. Well, smoke and mirrors is everything too. So at any rate, he realized that some of the most powerful teachings were using actually the obsidian mirror to change into different forms, as it said. But most notably, what he teaches, and what I learned, is healing with the obsidian mirror. So using the obsidian mirror to actually go and remove energies from yourself, to see yourself in a certain energy, like being really stressed, and then transmitting it to nothingness, which is what Tezcatlipoca represents. He's like the void, shunyata in Sanskrit, and Ein Sof in Kabbalah. But anyway, we were learning this process of removing negative karma with the obsidian mirror. But there were also a lot of other mirrors as well that would be used to actually create certain reflections that you wanted to endure, like a jade mirror or a gold mirror. But jade was very rare, and all the gold mirrors were melted down by the Spanish whenever they could get their hands on them. But the obsidian mirror stayed because it's very common, and so yeah, it's still around, and you can get some. But at any rate, he had learned this technique of actually moving from the reflection, which is the possibility that we're living, with to the shadow, whatever we didn't want to be living. And the shadow represents all the possible possibilities of something. So even in the Bible, it said, from the light, it came from the darkness. And so this is in the same way to how our dreams are creating reality, because the darkness of what's going on inside is actually being reflected of what we experience outside. So things are created in the dark. And that's why dreaming is the best place to be creating things. But as he was doing this work, he was looking for the answer of how to heal his mother. And he was told that you need to use the reflections and the shadows in his dreams. So he did. And through a lot of different techniques, he managed to successfully heal his mother of cancer. And she's doing quite well, from what I understand. But at any rate, when I discovered this, I was struck by the similarities, in a way, to actually content creation, and seeing exactly how this is a world of reflections. There's certain images that we have of governments and corporations and pretty much all these things, movies, animations even, that represent something, that are holding up the matrix just because we have a certain view of a certain possibility. But we ourselves, right? We get visualized by ourselves, by the world around us, by many reflections of how do we look if we're like a college graduate versus a non-college graduate versus working this job or that job, right? All these descriptions are creating our reality, and there's not that much of a way to get out of it. Now, spirituality and spiritual practice is the way of telling a new story that's unified with the universe to the world. But even still, it can feel, that's why great sages will go into the mountains to retreat, to leave behind all the stories of, the world and what we have. But never before, really, has it been possible to, in changing the viewpoint, the way we view the world, reality changes. And this has been verified even scientifically with Joe Dispenza's work on having people just meditate with a random number machine and having it skew to certain numbers. It's been proven in many other ways as well, but this is the principle of healing and spiritual practice, is through observing something, we actually change the result. This is even proven in the double slit experiment. But as we observe ourselves in content creation, we actually observe ourselves in whatever reality we want. We begin to be able to tell our story in a new way, one that has not really been accessible to the world. And for a lot of us, right, when we're creating content, when we're going about really creating this new life for ourselves, first we're dreaming it, we're pulling it from the shadow and literally creating a reflection of us living our best life, or actually whatever life that you really want. Not everybody creates the best for themselves, but certainly if you're someone that's really building a business or transmitting their message as an artist, or even just transmitting their message as a being, as someone that wants to wake up, as a healer, as a teacher, whatever you want, as you're bringing the higher version of yourself into manifestation, it's the same as putting into a mirror a certain reflection of yourself that you want to manifest. And, I believe that, these techniques are not just known, they are known by many different groups of people. The public is waking up to these techniques and these realizations, but the elites have known. And this is why there's so many of those shows on ice, because they're all creating reflections of scripted stories that are programmed into us that we can then learn to release through telling our own story. But even with content creation, it's this aspect of creating a reflection of yourself that you want to have be manifest and that you want to create in the world. And as you do that, that reflection becomes more and more reality. Now, with any practice like this, there are a need for consistency, because alchemy and energetic change happens over time. You have to be disciplined with it. But as you go about this practice, just like we did using jade mirrors, using different colors of obsidian mirrors, turquoise mirrors, all sorts of crystal mirrors to really change how we see ourselves, you actually feel like a unity with spiritual forces, with energy, because all energy is conscious, all energy is dreaming itself in a certain possibility of where it currently is. So as you decide you want to dream the world in a new possibility, more of the world's energy needs to flow through you, like the energy of the elements, of the rain, of the wind, all these subtle forces. And so as you're doing this in both meditation or content creation, you're literally allowing information to flow through you, which is itself conscious. And just like when you're a content creator, you're going to have all this energy of observation being flown through you, which is creating this reality where you're actually expressing more energy. Because I've thought about like spiritual blessings. So I've been very gifted at times and, very tested at times too. And it's all different sides of the same gift from the higher realms. But ultimately, there's this realization in all spiritual traditions that where attention goes, energy flows. And so as you become someone that has more attention going through you, you have more energy flowing through your situation. And this becomes, or why it becomes so easy to create things in the material world and make them successful when you're a content creator. For the simple reason that you have so much more attention on you. But, attention in its value isn't actually just a physical thing. It's also a spiritual thing. This is why meditation, getting the attention of spirits, of your ancestors, of all the forces that could want to help you in what you're doing, you actually become also more able to access synchronicity and create powerfully on the material plane. And so it's super important that you realize that these spiritual principles are also being mirrored in the digital plane. And this is exactly aligned with the Toltec teachings, where it's said that right now is the shift to the sixth sun. And what happens in the sixth sun is that what has been hidden in the darkness will be what has been hidden in the light will be revealed in the darkness. And this is very significant because it says the way that the world appears, the way that the world looks, is something that is just a function of the light. And the light isn't thought of as, none of these terms are good or bad. That was only brought later with the Spanish. But the darkness is where things are created internally, and the light is what is external. And so what has been hidden by all these external structures is the fact that there have been certain groups working on controlling reality through magic rituals, through all sorts of things, manipulation. We see them today, obviously. And all of this has been hidden in the light. But in the darkness, we can get scared. But things can also be revealed. We can see how we've been creating this whole thing. We can see our dreams. We can see what's going on in ourselves, which is creating the external hologram. And so, as you really realize that the spiritual and the physical planes are interlinked, it becomes a whole lot much more clear exactly what is going on with this shift in consciousness with AI in the digital world. And so I want everybody to realize that creating content, that shaping a new identity for yourself is as mystical as it gets. And I do intend to start using this knowledge to create actual practices that we can do to be creating this. But I know for me, so much power and enjoyment came from content creation as I started receiving it and viewing it as a magical act. Because it is. Even the people that were coding the internet thought that they were making like a new world of consciousness that was going to be free from the old system. Most of them were on mushrooms or LSD. And it's something that is not really talked about, but I think as our world becomes shaped more and more in a digital sense, these digital structures of AI, the way the computers work, are all mirrors of spiritual structures that have existed and will continue to exist. Like AI is just reflecting back to us the current paradigm of the world and where it's at. Obviously, there are filters to that reality, and obviously there are filters on the reality that we live in. Who knows how they came here exactly, but it's very clear there's certain directions that, the world is slanted and just its current development, that there could be other possibilities, and there needs to be a certain a lot of energy or a filter almost of what's allowed to occur in reality with its current spiritual evolution. And that's the same with AI. So as we see really these structures, what's really happening is just the things that have been hidden in our subconscious, shaping our reality, are being brought forward so we can see them, so we can interact with them, so we can decide if we want to keep dreaming this dream. And so if you're one of the rare witches, wizards, shamans, light bringers, whoever you are, whoever you're calling yourself, remember your own form of alchemy. Really let the wonder of the modern day go and move through you so you can actually use these new systems in a way that's going to help you create your best life. Because that's why they're here. We don't need to view them as scary. We don't need to view them as anything other than like beautiful parts of reality we can use however we want. So reclaim your magic, reclaim your power, transmit it through this mystical mirror that you're holding in your hand, and create your best reflection. Create your own story using the device of who you are, how you serve the world, how you impact it. And know that as you put energy into a vision of yourself, using this, you're bringing it into reality. So go and dream. What does your best life look like with this device, with the ability to record yourself, with the ability to be whoever you want to be? And if there's something that you want help with, if you want my team's help, you want my help, then go and click the link below. And I have a program where we create a business for you using the ability to transmit your best self, or help you scale your existing business. Because it's important that we remember that this can be used to create our best life, or you can use it to just consume dreams of the world floating by. So make the choice. Make the choice, and if you want to choose to create your best life and you need some help with it, click the link below. But let me know what you thought was interesting in this video. This is a subject that I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm glad to be able to really lead the way, I think, in bridging the mystical and the digital. So comment, I'll read all of them, and book a call if you feel called. Aloha.